Parking Committee meeting to order. My name is Lisa Dorsey. I've got Nick Allen and Bernie Flynn with me, as well as Mike Perone and Sean Metrick from Borough Management. Second agenda item, sorry. Comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Hearing none, seeing none, we're going to go to the garage management report.
Forrest Freeman with Reef Park. Doing well tonight. Similar story to what it's been the last few months. Things continue to keep climbing, especially on the transient side. We've actually picked up at Chestnut Street around 24 monthlies between this month. Bicentennial is relatively flat. It's smaller garage there. We do have a waiting list of parkers at Bicentennial and a very tiny wait at Chestnut Street. That's mainly construction that's occurring right now. We have about 2 weeks left at Chestnut Street until the construction is done. It's odds and ends at this point. Go over and start the facade at Bicentennial. That. From a numbers perspective, I mean, looking back at last year doesn't really tell us much because we were in the midst of COVID. Bicentennial compared to the same month, we're about 14% up. Total revenue, about $15,000, $16,000. Chestnut, we're about 1.2% down, and that's related to the construction and some space and not allow parkers in. So overall, things are moving along from a revenue standpoint. Weekends are still, weekends. Been quieter than they were that period, about 5-6 weeks ago, but still have our issues here. Extending out the time frame for people has helped. Stuck at the exit and some attendance, facilitate things as best as possible. Still operating with the same level of team members had since July. We do have remote monitoring as well, so that is helps us out. Garage cleanliness always a focus. And on the expense side, the budget we're favorable. We're actually under compared to last year, which is the credit card expense. Revenue goes up, the credit card. Graph-wise, it's Chestnut Street has taken a little dip off revenue and tickets just because, again, Bicentennial keeps going and going. Weekend nights, the Bicentennial transient revenue. It's all online. It's tickets, revenue down. Bicentennial people buying their flat for the last few months. That will flip it, bring the construction over to Bicentennial, some parkers over to Chestnut Street to accommodate, the space that we're losing, accommodated for. That's about it.
Thank you. Questions?
Mr. Dorsey, please.
Mr. Flynn?
Once the construction's done and everything's cleaned up at Chestnut Street Garage, is the permit sales going to fill the building up so we can show a positive outcome?
Yeah, and we've been picking up increased 25 parkers from last month to this month, and anticipate that trend to continue. Start coming back to so we'll be moving some parkers out of Bicentennial to fill in some of the back space. So we won't have as much space as could be anticipated, but as soon as Bicentennial back in possible, we're not going to. This will Bicentennial to Chestnut, so Bicentennial, so we'll maximize the revenue as possible. And
so moving to 2022. Our anticipation is most of the construction will be done, cleaned up, and moved out of the way based on the weather construction. As far as full occupancy for Chestnut Street Garage, how many permits How many parking spaces do we have? We have 600 some parking spaces there,
We're, right now, we're at 814.
814 available.
Well, we have the 689 spaces and we have 814 parkers. A good portion of those are daytime parkers. Most of them are 24/7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're pretty much at the maxed out level almost.
Oh, we can always sell more.
All right.
Plenty of space. No, we
Yeah.
can sell more there because of the way the diversity works. They're not all in at the time, and I mean, very rarely are they. So,
Right.
I mean, I can get a number for you, but it's we can sell more. I think at peak pre-COVID, we're close to 1,000 park. So we have
Yeah,
space
still,
for
we have 200 more spaces,
All right.
permits to sell. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
On to item number 4, the director's report. Mr. Metrick?
Thank you. Good evening. Going to revisit a lot of our familiar information about occupancy and revenue this month. It's going to be a short report. Forrest covered the news about the capital projects. The Chestnut Street garage repairs are wrapping up this or next week. Everything's come to budget. There haven't been any surprises at Chestnut Street garage. The surprise was that the company we contracted with had a change of project management stream, but they wasn't a hiccup at all. Project management team are now moving over to commence work at Bison. That'll be happening in the next. I want to go down to, if you will, please, the third slide. This shows the one. Thank you. That the occupancy numbers are continuing to grow at both garages. But one thing to appreciate about this graph is there's a lot more empty space at Chestnut than Centennial. Forrest commented on the volume of monthly permits that are sold at the garage, and yet we have this very low, relatively low average occupancy rate Chestnut Street, and that's because some of our main permit purchasers are large employers that haven't brought back all of their staff for in-person work, yet they still pay permits. So we think they're hedging their future fees back and park. So that's why the occupancy numbers are low. The permit numbers are at or near capacity, and that's a bit of an odd place to be in because people are paying for permits and people are. Bicentennial occupancy is a lot higher to capacity, but I think the next month date is going to look weird. Bicentennial project should last about 90 days, so I think it'll be the 3 months. It'll be kind of not going to have 189 is available. One day it'll be 320, another 60. It's just going to depend on what work's getting done. But everything's trending in the right direction in terms of there being a little more occupancy month over month. The trend line is positive. It's slow, but it's been headed in the right direction. Next slide is the familiar jumble of numbers, but the story in these numbers is we're beating budget on the 3 major revenue categories, which account for 80% of the bless you, parking department's revenue items. If you recall, last month I was a little concerned about the dip in parking meters. October was our best month this whole year for parking meters. So it recovered, and I'll show you on the graph what that looks like. Bottom line, we're beating budget by $453,000 as of 10/31. Those 3 major revenue items. At next month's committee meeting, I'm going to run down all of revenue and expense numbers for parking department. Give you a good estimate of where we'll be at year end because the year end is not far away at that point. So we should be able to predict with some accuracy where we're going to end up. But it's been a good year in terms of the recovery, revenue items. Also, kudos to the team last year for putting the right numbers into the budget this year. The next slide down just shows you that overall revenue in these three items is trailing 2019 only by a little bit, but it's exhibiting the same seasonal behavior 2019 did. We've got 3 months of data that tells us that's true. What's remarkable, I think, is I didn't think it was going to happen as of my second meeting here in February, but every month since March, we've been above the straight line budget line. So we've been beating revenue since February. Got a lot of lines on this graph, but I just want to focus on the orange line because last month the orange line dipped August to September in a downward trend, and that was concerning because this is parking meter revenue. The parking meter revenue rebounded really well. It's the peak for the year, beat the prior peak. If you were buying stock, you would have bought like at right there because this shows good health. It's peaked twice over prior highs. So we're still below where we were in 19 and 18, but let's see how November works out. They're both in those years, 19 and 18, we saw dips, perhaps because of the Thanksgiving holiday and students going home is one theory. Let's see how we do in November this year. It's good news that we're up above 170. So the conclusion of this financial news here on the last slide, I'm very comfortable with the operating budget transfer from the parking fund to the general fund being increased in the 22 operating budget. Last year's 1.5 change. This year we are budgeting 1.75. I'm confident we can based upon what I've seen data this year. And lastly, when we meet again in December for the last time of the year, we're going to put some framework together. Chairperson Dorsey and Mayor-elect Baptiste met with me to talk a little bit about parking strategy and strategic planning. Took home copies of our comprehensive parking study. Appreciate. Start mapping out. Implement those recommendations from the plan. Talked a lot about having our parking system be legible. Today, I discovered something about our parking system looking at the map that I never knew true. Certain small residential permit parking zones are not entitled to guest passes. Know that? Then I was all proud of myself, and I ran over to our parking service clerk who had been doing this work for decades. Tell her this great. She goes, "Oh yeah, I've known that all the time." So we have parking service clerks that have memorized the entire parking system because that's really the only way to get all of these exceptions organized in your head is just to memorize. I think that shouldn't be a good logical thread. Parking management, it should be intuitive, just like your smartphone's intuitive. So should, where do I park? How do I, why did I get this ticket? If you get a parking ticket, you should probably know why you got the, yeah, you know what, I'm taking a risk here. I did a couple quarters, I'm just gonna jump. But you want to avoid situations where you're getting tickets and don't know what rule they broke because it's hard to figure out. Most people we interact with, 99% of them are compliant. So let's try and work towards making the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Metrick. To a more cohesive plan. Any comments or questions?
Sorry, Ms. Dorsey. I have three quick ones. The sandblasting and the painting of the handrails inside the garages. We did have a problem with the contractor damaging the old. How did we settle that out?
There was a financial settlement agreed upon without having to escalate. It was all done through quick. We settled in about 10 days on a number. Now that the work at Chestnut is done, we're going to contact Otis Elevator to have and the money that we got from the contractor is going to pay at least half of that.
The second one is the work that's going to start out Bicentennial. Most of the work over there is going to be very temperature sensitive. Coatings and the cleaning, because we don't want to embed water into the drive-it, because it'll freeze thaw and replacing the fascia of the building. Hopefully the contractor is well aware of the temperature situations that we're going to have.
Because I'm not a materials expert, I will have that conversation with our project manager, Paul Donald Nakarada. I've had the same concerns at getting later in temperature dropping, particularly nighttime.
See, the issue is we're injecting pressure water to substrates. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun's already starting to set. You start to get the barometric pressure changing, and what happens is you get freeze thaw. That happened. The last one is the meter update. You know, the doomsday update of all the meters in the borough and transitioning over to kiosks. How are we looking at that? Because at one point, Barb was looking to borrow $200,000 to buy kiosks throughout the borough.
Funding for the single space meter upgrades and certain areas we're swapping to multi-space meters is in our capital budget. Preliminary budget that council approved. The project is underway. We've already sent meters off to be repaired. Be sent back to the manufacturer, which is on the West Coast, in 48 meters. Put 48 in a box, send them off. They're refurbished and sent back to us, and then we go grab the next batch to send off. We're going to be at the end of the, I don't have the exact numbers, and maybe we'll point maybe next month to give you some numbers and some update on that, where we stand and go, and where we're going to remind you of where we're going to end up with a smaller population of single space meters, going from, don't hold me to these numbers, but from around 601 down to 175, as we are swapping off-street parking payment technology space meter. There's still some single space meters being used in our off-street parking lots, and then we're still some single space meters being used in the university district, and we're swapping all of that multi-space meters. So if someone comes to the borough, one type of parking system they have to interact with, parking near the university, it'll be multi-space meters. If you're downtown, you'll be parking on the street, you'll be parking at our single space meter. We're going to get from here to there, refresh everyone's memory on the budget numbers. You have until 12/31/2 to make that change, because that's when it's sunsetting.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I hypothesized because I walked through campus on a holiday and didn't realize that college parking was down. You go on your walks, is it packed on Church Street is my question.
Church Street is pretty full.
Okay,
But it's very difficult to tell some days because they also use the shuttle buses over there for the university, yellow shuttle buses. Plus you have the lunch trucks there, and the university's starting to park their trucks and taking up parking spaces down there. So Church Street is pretty full beyond the lunch trucks. You know, up above could be a little bit of an issue, but and I also noticed that the kiosks on Sharpless and on South New are full. Yeah, they're back. So it's really nice, so. Am I correct, Mr. Hector?
Any other questions? All right, the last item on the agenda tonight is the October 2021 Parking Committee. Questions? Adjourned.